Thought I got okay. Thanks for reminding me. I had the recording button paused, so now we are officially recording. So yeah, the again, Amanda sent around the NDAs that we have 2 NDAs. I guess we should probably take them separately. Do you want to present those, Amanda?
They are a lot of legalese, and my toddler has an opinion. Hopefully you had time to review them because talking through them is a little bit more difficult than not. The emphasis in both NDAs that our legal support helped with is the necessity to comply with open meeting law. So we have to be able to disclose that the NDAs do in fact exist. We get into the caveats of what is like very private to the company, market related information that we'll have to navigate the nuances of in terms of what we are allowed to disclose and not. If there's any questions, if we receive a public information request, we will navigate that at that time. And we have no more than 3 days, so max of 3 days to respond to any of those requests. So that is something we need to be cognizant of and is reflected in the NDAs. We have a little bit more leeway with the Waitsfield Champlain Valley Telecom NDA than the CCI, but there's a little bit more, I think, bureaucracy to navigate on that side. Does anyone have any questions? Because hopefully you had time to maybe peruse them casually.
Marianne.
Yes, did we have our legal person look at it or not?
Okay. Yes, we've been through about 6 weeks of legal review for the documents.
Perfect. Okay, I'll make the motion that we approve them.
Second it.
Separately or together?
I think probably for clarity, maybe we should probably approve them individually.
I'll make the motion that we approve the non-disclosure agreement between Waitsfield Based Telephone Company.
I second.
Any discussion, any further discussion about this?
I'll just say I read through both of them and they are pretty standard boilerplate. There was not anything that I wouldn't expect to see in them. And I do read NDAs as part of my job. So I definitely have no issues with either one of them. And that's just personal opinion, but I did want to clarify.
That's great.
In the motion, do we need to authorize the chair to sign the agreement?
That would sounds like a nice friendly amendment.
Yeah.
I move that we amend the motion to authorize the chair to sign the NDA with Waitsfield Telecom.
Excellent.
Second, the amended motion.
Okay. Okay. All those in favor of the amended to amend the motion made by Marianne, seconded by Chris, to add on that to instruct the chair to sign the NDA. All those in favor of that amendment signify by saying aye.
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 Are those opposed? The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. That leaves on the table a motion that's been amended to approve the signing of the Waitsfield Valley Telecom NDA with giving instruction to the chair to sign. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Sam, you're opposed? Or is that?
No, I
a
said
late-
aye.
Okay, there was a late aye.
Oh.
No worries. It came in late. Any opposed? The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion carries. We have another NDA that needs to be signed.
I'll make that motion to sign the NDA with Consolidated CCI and authorize the chair to sign the agreement.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposition? Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion carries. We'll sign both of those. Thank you very much, Amanda, for your hard work and making sure that happened. That was a lot of back and forth with our lawyer, and Amanda did the lion's share, the hard lifting with heavy lifting with that.
Just real quick, a good question was brought up. If we have yet to receive the signed resolutions from a municipality, can those representatives act as voting members? Do you have any thoughts, Bill?
So, I mean, we've been proceeding. I mean, like they've been trickling in. I mean, I mean, this, and anybody feel free to jump in on this. There's a public meeting that occurred that showed the will of the people, the transactional paperwork, whether it's in hands of the CUD versus other. I mean, like the will of the people is spoken. So, I mean, we've been proceeding thus far. We've got a vast majority of it, but it's still town clerks that are sending along the signed paperwork from the select board chairs or their town clerks saying, who their representatives are. But we do have notifications. So
that's a yes. It
Yes.
sounds like bases are covered. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have opinion on that? Members? Okay, moving on to our new agenda item. If you were late coming to the game, we added in Alex Kelly as an agenda item just by himself. Alex, are you with us?
I am. Hey, Bill. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Cool. Can I take it away?
you may, and I'll give you some power.
Oh, thank you. Great. Well, so great to be here, everyone. For those of you I haven't met yet, my name is Alex Kelly. I'm with Rural Innovation Strategies, together with ValleyNet, who of course operates EC Fiber. We are helping the CUD with your business plan. And I wanted to attend today because I think we're at a very important juncture where we are going from the theoretical to the concrete. And we've been talking about possibilities and understanding what's been feasible up until this point. And it's looking increasingly likely that the funding is going to be available to the CUD in one form or another to really have the rubber hit the road. And so that being said, the CUD has some big decisions ahead of itself. And I know everyone is aware of the potential partners that the CUD has identified and has been talking with so far about how a partnership could work so that the CUD built the infrastructure and the partner operated it. And I think, frankly, you're going to have a tough decision ahead of you. And so what I wanted to start to talk about is what I need to do to basically empower everyone on this call to be able to make that decision in an informed way with the expertise and the knowledge that you need to do that. So, first I wanted to go through, and I'll share my screen and share a few slides, just an overview of what a public-private partnership with one of these entities could look like. And so we can go through kind of one by one the various factors that will be in that partnership. And then I want to end by offering myself up to maybe the new members or anyone else to talk more, to make sure everyone is up to speed and understands the factors at play and the questions we need to answer to make that decision. So let me share my screen and okay. Let me try this. Are you seeing a slide that says what goes into a PPP agreement? No. Too many tabs open. Let me try that one more time.
It would look like the end of a PowerPoint presentation.
Here we go. All right. Great. So, a public-private partnership agreement can take many forms, but usually I would say the components of them fall into these three categories. What the CUD is going to need to figure out, first of all, is who does what between the CUD and the partner. Everything from, who's doing the construction or the construction project management, who's responsible for maintenance of the network in the long term, who owns the installations to the house and the drops and the customer premise equipment, who's doing compliance work when you need to do reporting on resources you've used. There's a whole bunch of roles that is going to need to be figured out. I think we can all agree that as much as we can, minimizing the work the CUD needs to do in the long run is the right idea, although I would warrant that the CUD will need to save some revenue and some money to hire basically a part-time person moving forward to do things like pay the bills and pay the insurance and manage some of those aspects. So this is a big category here. I'm just touching on it very briefly, but the first thing we're going to need to figure out is what is the CUD doing and what is the private partner doing. Clearly, the heart of these arrangements are where does the money go and who pays what for what. And so a separate bucket I'm calling financial arrangements. That's the capital inputs, right? Are you providing all of the financing to build the network? Is that shared somehow? Who brings what to the table? Of course, there's the question of lease terms. So if you build and own the network, how does the private entity pay you for the right to use that network? It could be something like a simple per mile fee. It could be a fee per customer, or they could even pay a percentage of your debt service, depending on what kind of financing you have. So very important section here. We will work with you to model different options as we have ongoing conversations and we align on what would work for you and what would work for the private entity. And I think there's also an important element here of what service charges will happen for the end user. And the CUD should approach this assuming that you will have at least an equal say in what service charges go to the end user. There may be some fluctuation there, and we need to work out with you kind of what you're willing to compromise on and what you're willing to negotiate around, basically. So everything from, is there going to be a program for low-income subscribers in your region? And if so, what is the cost of that? I think we all want to push for that. Absolutely. And then what are the service tiers on top of that? Even down to, are you offering a phone service or not? So there's a lot to go through in that component of things. And lastly, the CUD is going to want to approach this agreement trying to codify as many values as you can. And these are values that I know, broadband advocates across the state have been talking about, and that's things like net neutrality, making sure there are no data caps, data is private and secure. You may even want to push for things like customer service response times and other elements there. So all of these elements go into the arrangement. Some of them are more like bartering chips. Some of them, you'll have to understand what's a deal breaker and what's not. I would expect that, your options in front of you will seem very, very different as we get into this. And the CUD is going to have to make some pretty tricky decisions, of course, with our help and input as needed, as to what you're willing to compromise on and what's a deal breaker. And it may be the case that you're negotiating with two options, one of whom is going to be more expensive but have more values that align with what you want, and one of them is going to be less expensive but not be able to commit to some of those values that you want. So you can start to see how these decisions become really challenging. I'll just do one more slide here, which is some other things to keep in mind as we go through this process. I've already mentioned, we're going to have to talk about what you're willing to compromise on and what's a deal breaker. It may end up being that you're perfectly aligned with the private partner on everything, and so it's easy, but we still need to go through this exercise to some extent. There's an element here where it's great to push for shared risk. So is the partner going to be able to bring capital to the table so that you're both investing in network? If there is a revenue shortfall and your debt service is it can't be met for a month, is there some way to share responsibility for that? At the end of the day, what we're going to do is model both sides to make sure that it's a good agreement for everyone, that you're safe, the revenue that you're bringing in from owning the network fully covers everything you need it to, including debt service, insurance, any of the roles you need to cover, if that's maintenance or otherwise, plus funding, digital adoption, digital literacy, equity, inclusion, whatever we want to build into that, we will make sure that from your side, that's covered. And then we also want to model from the private entity's side to make sure they're not taking advantage of you. You know, we'll have to keep in mind the bargaining chips, right, that you have as we go forward. And that's both the money that you may bring to the table with grant funding from the state, perhaps, or other resources, but also knowing that you have 2 options or more for partners is another good bargaining chip, because that means if something's not working, you can walk away. And lastly, I just wanted to, I would be remiss not to say that anything we put together is going to have to be looked over by a lawyer, probably multiple times, maybe perhaps many, many times, and also by entities that are likely to finance aspects of the network in the future. The model we built, if for those of you who've seen the feasibility study, assumes that the CUD raises some money up front to get going and then uses tax-exempt revenue bonds to really expand. With those tax-exempt revenue bonds come rules that you know, both the bond underwriters need to review to make sure they're comfortable raising money in that context. And also we need to make sure that they clear some IRS hurdles. So there is going to be an intense review process, and we'll help you through that by bringing the right people to the table to help you review. So I want to stop there and see if there are any questions, because I'm going fast and there's a lot. And then after that, we can talk about kind of what we need to do collectively to start to prepare to think about these things and make the decision. Cool. And I will share these 2 slides.
We have a question here from Terry Williams.
Yeah.
This is only my second meeting I've actually attended. I've been a member for a while, but
Yeah.
The initial conversation about infrastructure, anybody talk about deactivation if something more better technology comes by, who's going to bear the expense of the deactivation?
Yeah. So so there's a few components to unpack there with deactivation and other things like that. I certainly haven't. First of all, I haven't seen any technology on the horizon that would supplant a network of the caliber that you're building, especially at costs that you're going to be able to offer. So frankly, it's not in the top 10 concerns of mine, but we still should be talking about it and thinking about it no matter what. So there are various, and I'll loop it into kind of a conversation about other risks involved. There are risks involved in this endeavor. There are risks, you know, it's also challenging, right? This is why no one has done it before. So in the contract that you construct with the private entity, there has to be off ramps and kind of there's e-brakes, right? That you build into there if something goes wrong or if something is not, if something goes wrong, basically. And so that's one piece of the puzzle to making sure, you know, if the world we live in 5 years is drastically different, right? There will be a process, and this happens all the time, for if you've got debt, who gets paid back first, who's responsible for paying, and if not, you know, there's the good thing about CUDs is that taxpayers are not responsible at the end of the day. So there's very little risk for the actual towns. There's also you know, a lot of safeguards that need to be built into this agreement for situations where your partner, something happens to your partner. They get sold to a new entity, they go bankrupt, and that's another risk. And so, you know, we've actually, if you followed the Burlington Telecom saga, their contract did not stipulate that they had to give customer lists to the city when they closed down. And that caused a huge problem, a lot of lost revenue, and converting the network to a new owner was a huge challenge because of that. So the contract is going to have everything in place with contingencies for these types of occurrence if something goes wrong. The other thing is that the bond underwriters and the financiers of the network will review the contract and tell you, we don't like this clause, we can't raise money if the network has this if the partnership agreement has this component in it. And so they do this all across the country. They have standards that they will need you to meet to say, okay, this is a good agreement. It's got the appropriate safeguards and off ramps, and we're confident we can go raise X amount of money to support this network. And they will be able to really help with those safeguards as well.
Okay.
But good question.
Yeah, you answered part of my question. I was going to ask if there were existing PPPs that we could model ourselves after, and it sounds like there aren't. Can you give me examples of who the private company might be? Would it be the local phone company? Would it be three techies from UVM who want to start a business?
Sure.
Who would it be?
Sure. Yeah. So, and I can point you in the direction of a bunch of different public-private partnership models that have been well documented. So you can start thinking. I think I can even share some summaries of those that I've made just for this purpose. So the two partners that we think are the most viable to start talking to would be Waitsfield Champlain Telecom and Consolidated Communications. We can talk about a little bit about the pros and cons there if you want. But I would not recommend, the reason to go with a private partner is because of the expertise they bring and the scale they bring. I would not recommend going with three techies from UVM because they don't have existing bucket trucks, customer service. You want to leverage the established kind of scale and expertise of an existing entity, which is why you bring a private partner in the first place, right? The municipality can ensure that the network gets built to the last mile, and they don't have investors to be responsible to, and they can take a 30-year outlook on debt, bonds, for example, and the private entity does what it does best, which is operating the network. But I will send along to Bill some different models that are out there to get you thinking. But really, there's 100 models under the sun. So,
and it sounds like the fact that we don't all have the same local telephone company means nothing in this equation. Consolidated is a good option. I assume some people out there have consolidated, or maybe most, if you have a landline. And they're a very interesting option because they're building in the area a lot already, and they own space on the telephone poles already. So using them would likely reduce the construction costs by quite a bit. And we'll do those calculations so we can say, okay, well, going in with them means you'd save $2 million or $3 million over the course of building the network and construction. I think the trade-offs there is that they have shareholders they're responsible for, and they're a kind of company that spans 22 states. So you're getting a different vibe from them than you would going with a smaller company that doesn't have the scale and doesn't own pole assets in the region. So will be more expensive, but it's a little closer to home.
So what kind of scale do they have, Alex? They, as far as that goes, I mean, do they have the kind of trucks and that out in this area they could support us, or is that going to be an investment they have to make to support us?
You're talking about Waitsfield?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a great question. So there are some costs that scale with the number of customers, and there are some fixed costs that they can leverage. So in general, customer service agents will scale with the amount of customers, and to some extent, trucks and line people. So they would have to staff up to do work in your area.
Mm-hmm.
But what you're leveraging is some of the fixed costs, which is leadership team, engineering expertise, managers, as well as some of their kind of core network assets and infrastructure. Like there's some
technical pieces of equipment where they've got enough capacity to extend their network further without reinvesting in certain pieces of equipment. So
Mhm.
that's the kind of calculation there. Some things, yep, they'll need to grow. Some things will be fixed costs.
On that point, sorry to cut you off. For what it's worth, Maple does have an NDA or some kind of MOU signed with Waitsfield. And I think Waitsfield has also been open to discussions with Southern Vermont. So we would be sandwiched. So there's a business case for them as well, just as an FYI.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. It would be harder and harder for them to really go a long ways away from where they are. But as long as they're open to having the conversations, which they clearly are, it's very reasonable for them to see Rutland as a great place for a partnership that meets your needs and their needs.
And also actually to pile on as well, we have an MOU, a memorandum of understanding or agreement with Southern Vermont as well. Just FYI, like we've agreed to share information with them to partner to make something more palatable, maybe to an ISP or a service provider.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Alex before he continues on? Alex, the floor is yours.
Cool. Sure. Well, the last thing I just wanted to offer is, is to let you all know that I'm available as a resource to help build the CUD's capacity and understanding. And I can tell you, for those of you who are new, I know there are recordings of previous meetings and the feasibility studies out there, but I'm happy to answer questions. I can put my email in the chat. And the other thing is that if there are people who want to start to specialize in certain things, people who maybe have experience in certain components, I'm happy to meet one-on-one with you to help you start to kind of take ownership or have more involvement in certain aspects. And I'll give you some examples. There will be vendor selection that the CUD will likely need to do at some point, whether that's someone to do the kind of pre-development work and collect poll data, or even all the way to construction and other things. If you have experience with kind of vendor procurement stuff, we could meet one-on-one to kind of get up to speed on what that will look like. If you are experienced in the kind of financial world, we could meet to talk about what the kind of ongoing financial decisions and complexities are, so you can kind of develop more of an expertise in that particular area. So I would just put that out there, and I don't want to, I use me as a resource, and I'm just here to empower you all to make these important decisions. So that's what I would say. Bill, you're on mute. And the other thing, I guess, I'll turn it back over to you, is that, as you know, there will be some very sensitive business conversations. And so, those, per the public records rules, can happen in closed sessions. And so if there's at some point we should maybe with the executive committee, create a framework for talking through the decisions, and especially the sensitive areas, and then bringing that to the larger group so we can maintain an open meeting and also get the work we need to do done. So any other questions?
Excellent. Thank you, Alex. And yes, and it's a perfect segue. It's almost like we planned it into agenda item number 5, executive committee update. We need to have our very first executive committee meeting. However, we need executive committee members to make that happen so we can start doing some of this heavy lifting that Alex has talked about happening going down the road. And I know that if I'm looking at the list correctly, remembering correctly, I'm likely interested. Cassandra had expressed interest. Andrew, I believe it expressed interest. Chris Custer You talked about it. I want to confirm.
Yes, sure.
Okay. So was there anybody else interested in serving the executive committee? That's just an extra meeting. That's all. Just some heavy lifting, a lot of reading. But we need 3 more members so we can be an executive committee.
This is John Hill and Benson. I'd like to do it.
John Hill, and then I see Jordan put up his hand from Wallingford.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. It feels like a VPR tele. And oh.
I'll do it too, Bill.
All right. Okay. Tim and okay. So we got Tim and Tom. Boy.
Only
If
if
Tom can take it.
either way, only
Oh.
if you needed me, I would stop.
So Tom, Tim, Jordan. Let's see. Tom, Tim, Jordan, Chris, Andrew, Bill, Cassandra. Did I miss anybody? 1, 2, 3.
Miss John or
John
oh, no,
Hill.
you
John
said
Hill. Yeah, John. No, I didn't say John. Thank you, John Hill.
Okay.
My scribbles from 10 seconds ago, I couldn't read. So that sounds like I don't know if we need to make an motion, Amanda, to appoint those folks to the executive committee.
I'd say it can't hurt considering our very intense need for transparency at this junction.
I agree.
All right. Who would like to make a motion to have that slate of characters appointed to the executive committee? All right,
I'll
Terry.
move.
Terry Williams, John seconded. I saw Terry put his hand up. John seconded. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
I
Are you? The delay. I gotta wait for that delay. That's not a live meeting. It seems as though it's unanimous. It appears the ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. We have an executive committee. So we'll send out an email to set up the first executive committee meeting. It'll likely happen within the next couple of weeks because we have a lot to chew on, start thinking about. I'm very excited to have all these people here. This is just remarkable. Moving on from our executive committee update to our number 6, number 7 actually now, CUD accelerator program updates. So there was this really robust accelerator program that was created by Evan Carlson of, I forget, all the CUDs get clumped up in my head. Is he NEK? NEK. And they created this fantastic educational piece for CUD members. And I think he's looking to put it all into one large document. I have all 9 segmented recorded videos that they have from those presentations. I know Chris Custer attended a vast majority of them.
All of them.
Yes.
Every single one. I made them all.
Oh, fantastic. And did you find that they were worth your time?
I did. In fact, tonight's meeting actually went a lot smoother for me because of that. Like I knew the answer to the question, when it came to, about the technology and stuff coming, and it's like, no, fiber is kind of future proof. There isn't really anything out there because, they discussed that whole thing. And guys, gals, you should go back and watch that because if it's got everything from the finances through the technology, through partnerships, a lot of presentations from other states, people that have done this. There is a treasure trove of information in there. There was even show and tell with how to splice fiber, and I mean, it was soup to nuts. And I would say for me, I think the finance was by far the most difficult. I'm not a finance person, but I was very confused coming into this at first and couldn't understand where money and stuff was coming from. But after going through that and understanding, it's like it's investors, dude. You're trying to put yourself into a position where you can show a return to investors, which will invest in us. And, the overarching part of that is simple, but the intrinsics are very complicated, underneath that. But it was a great series. So I would say anybody that wants to serve on a board like this, specific to like Communication Unions District, you kind of need to have some background, and that was definitely worth it for me.
Bill, where are the recordings housed?
So they are currently housed. It's a little clunky. They're housed on somebody's Google Drive, but I know that Evan is putting together one central repository for this. And Amanda, you saw your hand up. I think you had sent an email.
Yeah, if the links are all still valid, I had collected all the links to a single email, and those had gone out, I think, a couple weeks ago. So I think I've updated that since, and I can send that back out to the group.
If you could, because I didn't get an email.
Oh yeah, it was a couple weeks ago. It was before we connected. So
Yeah, before we chatted. Yeah,
and I'll send it to the board.
that'd be great.
Just be aware, it's many hours. Each session was, some of the sessions went over 2 hours, some were slightly less, but we're talking heavy duty. So, you really, going to have to set some time aside, and I would say pick and choose the things, that are most important to you, where you think you really want to know more about something. For the finance people, obviously you're going to gain a lot through that. But, if you have tech questions, about just in general, what technology is out there, why are they using this? And there's some great sessions on that really, really will help you understand that.
That's great. Hopefully it'll fight off senility. So.
So I thank you, Amanda, for offering to send that out again. And I know that Evan sent out something saying he was hoping to put these all in one central location too, but Amanda compiled all the links as they came. And again, they're great. I sat in the first couple, and I mean, while an hour and a half, hour, 45 minutes listening to somebody talk about these things seems rather boring, it's actually quite interesting, especially, in light of what we're doing. And the first couple I went to were fantastic. So CUD Accelerated Program updates, check. Item number 7. Item number 8, our legislative update. I leave this to Amanda. Because
yeah, let's also, so H315 did pass. And that's exciting. I need to go back to that email because I was writing you all an email and distracted. That does allot 1.6 million to CUDs to pay for capacity-esque needs or pre-construction. However, that money is supposed to be allotted from the American Rescue Plan Act. And those funds, we're still waiting for federal guidance on spending and such. So that I think is anticipated for May 11th when we'll have that guidance. So maybe a week or so after that, then funds will be made available. Theoretically, in the meantime, we've been asked to consider, and this is as of today, I haven't been holding on to this and keeping it from you. This came today. State sent out an email suggesting that if CUDs are capable to outline potential pre-construction expenses, general operating expenses, and explore potential projects that we might be able to engage upon with other CUDs. And we kind of have that in place, for example, with the MOU that the OCCUD has signed with Southern Vermont CUD. So there's already some foundation for that. So that's good news. H360, which has a lot more, I would say, hanging in the balance for CUDs, and Alex might be able to speak to that more than I, is still hanging in the balance. Initially, a lot of that was earmarked for CUDs. Now it might be for ISP CUDs or anyone who can submit an application. So there's still a lot of discussion going on. Alex, do you have more you'd want to say on H360? I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
No, I think it's still a long way from being crystallized. So, I mean, it's so hard to keep up with all the testimony going on in the Senate, especially, and I think that we've got a ways to go.
Yeah, so a lot of talking and hearings with the Senate Finance Committee and ISPs right now. Terry?
Amanda, wasn't there an S-118 that was floating around out there too? What happens to that?
I haven't heard about that getting shot down yet. That That was proposed by, I think, 6 senators, 2 of which are Rutland senators, Collmore and Terenzini, to reconstitute the Vermont Telecommunications Authority. It had a bar set of 25.3, and it would put money towards wireless and I don't know if that involves towers or what. There wasn't that much detail, but wireless and so mobile and other internet. That is, and no money for CUDs. So it's highly in competition with everything we've been working on for like the last year. At least that's my perception of it. I might be a little emotionally invested, so take that with a grain of salt. But it was our interpretation that something like H360 would be significantly more beneficial to anyone wanting to actually build out hard infrastructure and not emphasis on wireless, because we've seen wireless is not geographically viable for everyone. So we did post out a Front Porch Forum post asking if people felt inclined to reach out to their senators to express support more for H360 as opposed to S118. So any thoughts, opinions, please bring them. Some of that was personally tainted, but otherwise reviewed from others as well, not just me.
I respectfully disagree with Amanda in that it was a personal thing. It wasn't personal at all. It really seemed to cut counter to what we had stated as our mission state from the beginning, just to provide, we're looking to provide fiber to the home. We're looking to provide I want to say
high-speed internet, not just 25.3 and not relying on wireless.
Right. I mean, and so I testified in front of the finance committee the day where, the other CUDs testified, and yeah, we'll be interested to see how this all sugars out at the end. But we won't count it until the ink is dry, because we know how things can change so quickly.
But you can't have both, right?
No, I don't think so. They compete with each other, and that one creates another entity as well. So they'd both be creating bureaucracies, because we all love a good bureaucracy, and have different delineations for funds and infrastructure, like soft infrastructure, like how money would go out or what the requirements would be. But yeah. So if any other questions on that S118?
So was the 118, is that the one that I heard about that was doing like $25 a month for low income Vermonters to lower their internet bill?
Associated with that is that, I can't pronounce their name well, Evsley's out of Stowe. There's a couple there that have put together a nonprofit to advocate for internet for all, which is great. But it's Starlink focused and founded, and 25.3, I think. So there's definitely lobbying or a good campaigning going on. And I think it might have been connected to that. I think Alex was just shaking his head. Yes. So, that's what I believe my understanding is.
That's my suspicion as well.
Yeah. There's also plenty of personal opinion articles that have been published that allude or directly say that. So.
Yes.
So, yeah. There's also, so again, ARPA, the American Rescue ARPA funds. Those, again, we're waiting on to see what actually happens from the Fed. We should know in May. That said, some towns have reached out to the RPC to ask if they could support high-speed internet build out with their funds if they so choose. That's a really nice idea if a town feels so inclined. That said, our continued response is we can't say yay or nay until we have that federal guidance. So some towns have reached out, and we appreciate that thought, because this is, all hands on deck. But just so you know, we need to have that federal guidance to know what's possible. So just as an FYI, because that has been a question for multiple municipalities.
I'm on the select board in Benson, and our understanding is that there is around $3 per capita coming to us, and that it is currently restricted to water and sewage upgrades and or maintenance and upgrades and high-speed internet. So yeah, that looks really good, but as you said, yeah, it's not over till it's over, and it's not over till we have the money. So there's also a fairly long period of time that we will have to use the money. Our understanding now is that the money will need to be used by 2024.
That time frame also sounds familiar, but yeah, we're waiting to see what those guidelines are.
Everything says 3 years.
One more question. So is the RPC gonna have another committee? Like a communication committee, or are you it?
You're muted, Amanda.
And I'm muted.
On
That's
purpose?
how strong place the RPC Community Committee or Communication Committee is. The Community Committee, on which Larry Corsell sits, is very robust and diligent, and I'm grateful for them. Whether or not the RPC will have another committee is possible. This is a lot of work. Personally, I can say it's a lot of work. So there could be benefit from that additional infrastructure within the RRPC. And there is a contract from the RPC to entertain. It's short, and we can get into that now or next time. My boss would probably prefer this time, but it's definitely, again, as you said, additional infrastructure within the RPC to support the greater Rutland region as they take on regional infrastructure build out, such as internet, is probably necessary. So
And
I don't want to put you on the spot.
Well, we actually have that. We have that to consider further down on our agenda after our grant updates, which I don't think we have any grant updates currently. We're waiting for all this money.
that's
again,
synonymous with legislative updates at this
right?
point.
Waiting for the ink to dry on those bills that were not signed but passed in the law, as well as the potential for these other ones and the ARPA fund that they're promising. I've heard 3 different dates on information where we'll have final information for the Fed. So I'll take the latest date and add 2 weeks probably. So passing over grant updates, moving on to a contract with Rutland Regional Planning Commission. There was an email that was sent for a contract for consideration for services with the Rutland Regional Planning Commission. Did anybody have an opportunity to look at it? Does anybody have any strong opinions about it?
Bill, out of curiosity, what do we have budgeted for that contract?
We didn't really, we carry over from last year, and this is really rough numbers. Get a treasurer to figure out exactly where we're at, was around $30,000-ish, 20, and this calls for $10,000 worth of services. Last year we spent $20,000 in 6 months. This year we haven't really been spending any money. Amanda's been volunteering her time from January 1 on.
Thank you.
Yes. You're welcome.
So, but it is a rather a lot of work, and I mean, if anyone wanted to make a motion to approve this contract.
And just to clarify, this is template language that we use with other towns, and we specifically also made this a not to exceed amount, knowing what should be kept on hand in case additional legal needs come up. For example, we do still have the retainer, and while there have been some requests for legal services, I think there's still like $6,500 in the retainer, and that's only down from $8,000. And considering how much they cost per hour, that means we're doing really good and using them selectively, but necessary. But that does still leave us plenty of money in the event that we need substantial legal support for some reason. And that not to exceed amount of $10,000 would take the CUD, I'm sorry for the possessives, through the end of the year. So December 31, 2021. And again, that would not exceed, you'd get reports, and the general scope is included in that contract.
If it's not too, yeah, it's a smoking hot deal as far as I'm concerned. I mean, we're getting a lot of work out of Amanda and the RPC making this happen. Mary
Yeah,
Ann,
I'd like to make the motion that we accept the agreement between the Planning Commission for all of Amanda's good work through the end of December for $10,000, and we need a signature. Please.
Alex, I'm sorry. Did you want to ask a question or did you just raise your hand by accident?
No, I was
It was applauding.
Oh, it's
it was
applied. Okay.
applauding for the
Okay.
good work. Come,
Okay.
I'll do it live here.
Okay. Okay.
And I'll second the motion.
Got a second. We got a motion from Marion and a second from Andrew. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
I,
Aye. It is. It passes unanimously. So we have a contract with RRPC. Fantastic. And thank you again. And I don't think enough can be said about the work that Amanda has done to keep this together. But I
I don't
digress.
see his name on here, but I want to
Yeah,
make.
she's gone up.
Oh, so moving on, looking at our VCUDA update is the next thing we have on our agenda. And I have not, VCUDA spends, they meet weekly. There's a lot of things that go back and forth with VCUDA. If anybody would like to serve as a rep that isn't me for VCUDA, they usually meet on the mornings. They're plugged into what's going on. And right now there's a lot going on, especially legislatively, but there's a lot of great information that can be gleaned. So if there's anybody that's interested in I took over the VCUDA rep when we had to have somebody else that left, and our alternate is Sam. I know that hours don't work for Sam as an alternate for that. So just keep in mind, if you want to be a part of VCUDA, that's a Vermont CUD Association.
What is VCUDA? Excuse my ignorance.
No. It's the Vermont Communications Union District Association.
Oh.
And so all the chairs, or all their reps go and meet, and they, do some policy, legislative advocacy. I mean, and they have a ton of shared documents and information that we can use to, inform what we're doing.
I'd be willing to do it. Yeah, it's once a month.
Oh no!
How often? Forget it. Forget I said anything. How
is now we make a motion?
No, wait a second. I feel like I'm in Soviet Russia. Wait a second.
No, they right now. I mean, they've been meeting weekly. Yes, and it's usually a mid-morning Wednesday or Thursday morning. I think they've been meeting a lot more because of the legislative stuff and the money coming down, but it's I think it's good for us to have representation.
And it's in Rutland?
It's by way of Zoom. They meet by way of
Zoom.
Yeah.
Forget it. I can do it. That's fine.
All right.
Awesome.
Someone officially make the nomination of Jordan Jenkins.
I make a motion that we.
So you got Tom making a motion, Terry seconding. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
It's a latency issue.
Exactly. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes who have it. Motion carries. Fantastic. New member recruitment. I'm looking at looking at the map. We're starting to fill in really nicely. We're talking about Rutland County people that are left to join. We have Ira, Middletown Springs, Timoth, Mount Holly, Danby, Mount Tabor, and Shrewsbury. So if you guys have the opportunity to recruit folks from those areas, and I've heard that Shrewsbury may be interested. So if you just keep in mind that we're always trying to recruit to get our numbers so we can cover the entire county, and we're doing pretty well, but Addison has us beat, but we stole one of their people. So win. And
Bill, what was the name of those towns again?
sure, we have towns that are not a part of us right now are Middletown Springs, Timoth, Ira, Shrewsbury, Mount Holly, Mount Tabor, and Danby. So if you know people in those towns, you can put a bug in somebody's ear. Amanda's been fantastic about attending meetings to drum up support. And again, it doesn't, I mean, the sales pitch is that it's not,
Excuse me.
you're not committing taxpayer money from your town to do it. You're committing your representation. So just please keep that in mind with our updates or our recruitment. Number 12 is,
Thank
other,
you.
or 13 is other business. Any other business to consider? Set our next meeting. Does this meeting time work for everybody that's here? Or usually the third, I think it's the third
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Works good. Yeah.
Yeah. it's
Yeah, it
fine.
works.
Okay. So our next meeting will be the third Wednesday of May, which if my calendar is to be believed, will be the 19th of May,
Yeah.
May 19th. So that'll be our next meeting, 5 p.m. by way of Zoom as opposed to in person. With that, any motions to adjourn?
Bill,
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Bill, are we gonna do an executive committee meeting?
Yes,
date?
we'll I don't want to set the executive, well, we guess we could set the executive committee meeting date. Most of the executive committee
Bob?
members are here.
Everybody but Amanda.
Everybody, Amanda, right? And she's an ex officio, but we definitely do want to make sure Amanda's a part of that. I think maybe we could set that by way of email. I'll send a group email out to the folks that are part of the executive committee.
Okay.
You
But we'll-
originally said, yeah,
Okay. Meeting to adjourn from anyone?
yeah. Make a motion to adjourn.
Chris,
I'll second that.
second for Tim. It's non-debatable. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye. And we are adjourned at 6:03. Thank you everyone for showing up. Thank you for volunteering for the work that you're doing. I'll make sure that the people at VCUDA know that you are now our rep, Jordan.
Okay, great.
And I'll send out that group email to everybody to try and set that executive committee meeting. And that's it.
All
Have a
right.
good night. Drive safely.
Thank
Hope you don't
you.
get the plow
Yes.
trucks out.
Nice to meet everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Take care.
Hey,
Good night.
everybody.